Hi students, today 11th portion in particularly is a NEET portion which topic is going to discuss about commonly called as complex tissue. What are definitions of complex tissue? So complex is a knit together tissue, the group of cell performing as a common function. It will be irrespective position of origin. So what are definitions of complex tissue is commonly called as a group of cell or a group of tissue. For structural view it will be different, but it performs as a common function. Based on the structural view, the complex tissue can be classified as at two types, namely, one is xylem, another one is phloem. Can I go to that first one discussing, namely xylem. The word xylem is derived from Greek word that means xylose. So what is the meaning of xylose is commonly called as wood. So what are the main functions of xylem? Nothing but xylem is a transport water and mineral salts to various parts of the plant body. Based on the nature, if xylem is derived from procambium, that is commonly called as primary xylem. Instead of the xylem is derived from vascular cambium, that is commonly called as secondary xylem. For the nature, based on the formation, early formed xylem is namely called as protoxylem. Likewise, later formed xylem is commonly called as a metaxylem. So based on the function nature, the xylem element can be classified as four types, namely tracheids, second one vessels, third one Xylem Fiber, fourth one Xylem Parenchyma. Can I go to the first one is commonly called as tracheids. Tracheids are commonly called as is elongated cell with blended ends. It's not as a sharp at the end. So that we say tracheids are commonly called as is a elongated cell with blended apex. These are commonly called as is a lumen. Lumen is a broad than that of fiber. So what I'd like to say, comparing fiber, the lumen is so broad. But here, the structure of tracheids, there can be thickening due to lignin deposition. So the commonly called as process called lignification. So due to depositions of lignin, they can be formed as secondary wall. So secondary wall is made up of lignin. So inner to the tracheids, they can be posed as pits are there. What are types of pit is available called? Simple pit and bodied pit. So this is that simple pit is a commonly called as bordered pit. Due to depositions of secondary wall substances, there are different kinds of cell wall thickening that are occurred inner to the tracheid structure. Is namely called as annular, spiral, scalariform, reticulate, pitted. There are different kinds of cell wall thickenings are there. What are they called? Annular. So due to deposition of secondary wall substances, they can be look like a ring-like structure. These are annular. What are they called? Spiral. Look like spring-like structure. This is that spiral. What is that? Scalariform. Look like ladder. What is the reticulate? That means look like net-like appearance. The last one is commonly called as pit. That's a commonly called as uniformly thickening except pit. So except pit, remaining all the areas commonly called as uniformly thickening. These are things is commonly called as different kinds of cell wall thickening. Is the annular, like ring, spiral, look like spring, scalariform, look like ladder, reticulate, look like net, pitted. This is commonly called as uniformly thickening. Except pit. So here, tracheids are commonly called as it is the imperforated cell. So if we have to think about like this, it is imperforated. How do we conduct water? The conductions of water and mineral salts, it mostly takes place through bordered pit. I am already indicating to you, there are two different kinds of pits are there, simple pit and a bordered pit. So the tracheids are conductions of water, it must be takes place through bordered pit. If you take a cross sections of tracheids mean, the tracheids it must be appear in the form of polygonal in shapes. Tracheids are chief water conducting elements in pteridophytes, and gymnosperm. So what is the main functions of tracheids is commonly called as conductions of water and mineral salts. Apart from conductions of water and mineral salt, the tracheids is also perform one of the important functions commonly called as mechanical support. Can I go to the second elements commonly called as vessels? Vessels are commonly called as it's a perforated cell. The vessels are arranging one above the another manner. So whichever is responsible for separate the vessels is commonly called as end plate. From a structural view, these are vessels. There are two different kinds of pit is there. This is a simple pit. This is commonly called as a bordered pit. So the lumen is commonly called as it's a broad than that of tracheids. So which is responsible for separate the vessels is commonly called as plate. The vessel plates are responsible for separate each vessel because the vessels are arranging one above the another manner. Due to dissolutions of entire end wall, the can form simple pore is there. If the entire end wall dissolution became it can form only one pore is commonly called as simple perforation plate. Simple perforation plate is generally noticed in mangifera. Sometimes the end walls are dissolution. Instead of single pore, they can form many pores are formed. These are commonly called as multiple perforation plate. Multiple perforation plate is generally noticed in Liriodendron. Like tracheids, vessels also, if you take cross section is a polygonal shape, there can be occur different kinds of cell wall thickening. I have already mentioned the tracheids, what that annular, spiral, scalariform, reticulate and picted. Such a same structure view is not only occur tracheids, it's as well as is occur in vessels also. Because vessels also they can be formed secondary wall substances. Due to deposition of secondary wall substances, there are different kinds of structure. Is not only form tracheid, it also form vessels also. So okay, vessels are chief water conducting elements in angiosperm. Vessels are absent in peridophytes and the gymnosperm. In gymnosperm, neetum comes under order needles. So neetum only having vessels. In general, pteridophytes and gymnosperm vessels are absent, but in neetum is only having recording vessels. What are the main functions of vessels is commonly called as transport water and mineral salt. Apart from transport water and mineral salt, the vessels are carry out the another one function is commonly called as it gives mechanical strength to the plant body. The third one element is commonly called as Xylem Fiber. So what are the definitions of Xylem Fiber? So fiber, it is a scleral chemical cell. So what are the definition? Fiber of scleral chemical cell associated with the xylem. That's a commonly called as Xylem Fiber. Xylem fiber is also known as libriform fiber. So for the structural view, Xylem fiber is commonly called as, it is a long, narrow with the pointed ends. If you take cross section, there can be process, narrow lumen is there. So Xylem fiber is commonly called as, it's a dead cell. In general, Xylem fiber is present in both primary and secondary xylem. The last one is called as Xylem parenchyma. So what definition? Parenchyma cell is commonly called as, is a living tissue. So what definition? Parenchyma cell, it is associated with the xylem. For the characteristic feature, parenchyma cell is commonly called as, it's a living tissue. The cell wall is so thin and elastic. So what are the main functions of xylem parenchyma, commonly called as storage? So it can store reserve food in the form of starch and fat. Can I classify the four kinds of cell? Namely, tracheids, vessel, xylem fiber and xylem parenchyma. Among the four constituent cell, xylem parenchyma only is a living. Other tracheids, vessels and xylem fibers are dead tissue. In addition, what are the main functions of xylem parenchyma cell? It is the assist conductions of water and mineral salts. Can I go to that second one, complex tissue is commonly called as phloem. So phloem is nothing but is another complex tissue. What are main functions of complex tissue in phloem is commonly called as the transport food materials for various parts of the plant body. Like xylem, if phloem is derived from procambium, namely primary phloem. Instead of that phloem is derived from vascular cambium, is namely called as secondary phloem. Likewise, early formed phloem is namely called as protoploem. So protoploem is small as well as it is short-lived. Why it will be considered short-lived means that the protoploem becomes crushed. After crushing, they can form smaller structure. Each structure became developed to largest structure. So that we say later formed phloem is commonly called as metaploem. So early formed phloem is commonly called as protoploem and later formed phloem is commonly called as metaploem. Like xylem, phloem also having four elements, namely sieve elements, companion cell, phloem parenchyma, fourth one phloem fiber. Can I go to discuss about the first elements? Sewer elements. Sewer elements commonly called as is a conducting elements of phloem. They have thick walls. The thick walls containing number of pores look like sieve. That's a commonly called as sieve plate. So, sewer elements are commonly called as conducting element. They have thick primary wall. The end walls contain number of pores is commonly called as sieve plates. Sewer elements are generally arranged one above the another to form vertical sieve tubes. This is commonly called sieve tubes. So, what are the characteristic features of sieve tubes? Sieve tubes are commonly called as lining layer of cytoplasm. In addition, absence of nucleus are there. Instead of absence of nucleus, there can be possess a small putting bodies are there. That's a commonly called as slime putting body. So nucleus are absent, not having dense cytoplasm. Instead of there can be a process lining layer of cytoplasm. So how can be conductive food material, which is responsible for conductive food material? Lining layer of cytoplasm that are responsible for conducting food materials. The sewer elements can be classified as two types, namely called as sieve cells and sieve tubes. Sieve cells are present in pteridophytes and the gymnosperm. Likewise, sieve tubes are present in angiosperm. So how you have to be classified or how to be differentiate sieve cells from sieve tubes? So here, sieve cells are having sieve area under lateral wall. Sieve cells are not arranged one above the another. Sieve cells are not associated with companion cell. That's the phenomenon. What do you say? Sieve cells are having sieve area on the lateral walls only. They are not associated with the companion cell. They are not arranged one above the another manner. But sieve tubes are arranging one above the another. Because there is a sieve tube, there is a sieve tubes. So sieve tubes are arranged one above the another. They are having sieve area on the sieve plate. These are called sieve plates. Or sieve plates are having sieve pore. This is commonly called a sieve plate. They are associated with the component. That is a commonly called as a component cell. So sieve tubes arranged one above the another manner. Sieve tubes having sieve plates at the end wall. They are associated with the component cell. In mature sieve tubes, sometimes the sieve pores are blacked because there is no conduction takes place. So in the mature sieve tubes, sieve plates, sometimes the pores are blocked by the special chemical substances that is commonly called as callose. Can I go to the next one element is commonly called as component cell. What are the component cell? That's a commonly called as thin walled, elongated, specialized parenchyma cell. What is it? So thin walled, elongated, specialized parenchyma cell is commonly called as component cell. The component cell is a highly contrast with the sieve tubes. How it can be highly contrast with sieve tubes? I'm already indicating to you. In sieve tubes, nucleus are absent, but in component cell having prominent large nucleus are there. And also they can be possessed dense cytoplasms are there. So that is a characteristic feature is a highly contrast with the sieve tubes. That component cell where it can be attached to the sieve tubes. So the component cell attached to the sieve tubes through a pit. This is a pit at lateral wall. So component cell attached to the sieve tubes through a pit at the lateral wall. In plant system, component cells are generally present in angiosperms. That is a special characteristic feature. In addition, what is the main functions of component cell? That is commonly called as that's responsible for assist the sieve tubes for conductions of food materials. That is the functions of component cells. Can I go to the third element is commonly called as phloem parenchyma. What are the definitions commonly called as? Parenchyma is a living tissue. So what are the definitions commonly called as? Parenchyma cell associated with phloem. That's are commonly called as phloem parenchyma cells. So parenchyma cell is commonly called as a living tissue. The cells are commonly called as thin and elastic. Is a made up of cellulose. What are the main functions of phloem parenchyma commonly called as storage? It is store reserve food material in the form of starch, fat, resin, and the tannins, etc. Phloem parenchyma is generally present in gymnosperm, then pteridophytes, and dicots. So phloem parenchyma is generally absent in monocots. So can I go to the last one is commonly called as phloem fiber. So what are the definitions of phloem fiber is commonly called as? Fiber, it is a sclerenchymal cell. Also called it's a dead cell. So what are the definitions commonly called as? Fiber of sclerenchymal cell or sclerenchymatous fiber. It is associated with the phloem. That is commonly called as phloem fiber. For structural view, phloem fiber is commonly called as is a long, narrow with pointed ends. If you take a cross section having narrow lumen, we have to find out the having secondary wall, which is responsible for formations of secondary wall is commonly called as lignin deposition. Due to lignin deposition, they can be formed lignified secondary wall is made up. For here, phloem fiber is also known as bast fiber. You know, already discussed you. Xylem fiber is also called libriform fiber. Likewise, phloem fiber is also called bast fiber. In general, in plants, phloem fiber where it can be present, where it can be absent. Phloem fiber is generally absent in primary phloem, but they are present in secondary phloem. So those are things to discuss about complex tissue. What are the commonly called as? Xylem and phloem. Xylem is responsible for transport water and mineral salts. Phloem is responsible for transport food particles. Xylem also having 4 elements. Likewise, tracheids, vessels, xylem fiber to xylem parenchyma. Likewise, phloem is transport food particles from various parts of the plant body. Like xylem, phloem also having 4 elements, namely pseudoelement, component cell, phloem parenchyma, and phloem fiber. Thank you. Can discuss in more.